Playing a video game was once as simple as putting a cartridge into a console and turning the power on. But in the early 2000s, the idea of playing video games with others over the internet started to gain popularity. In most cases, this requires the game's developers to run a server that connects players with each other. But eventually, operating a server stops being profitable, and the game's publisher decides to shut them down. What happens to these games when players can no longer connect to each other? How will future generations be able to experience the online games of the past?
When we talk about game preservation, we're talking about, tens of years. Like, can somebody play a video game, today? Can they experience that game 20 to 30 years from now? And the industry is really not set up for that.
2003's Resident Evil Outbreak for the PlayStation 2 was Capcom's first attempt at taking the popular survival horror franchise online. Players worked in groups of up to 4, finding supplies and solving puzzles to survive hordes of zombies and escape to safety. The game was met with mediocre sales and lukewarm reviews. Playing online with consoles wasn't a refined experience yet, and there wasn't a way to communicate with other players using voice or text. You could press a button to say a predefined phrase, but it was nearly impossible to understand what your partners were thinking.
I found it!
However, fans found a lot of things to like about the game. The scenarios you could play through were unique, required strong teamwork, and the game introduced a memorable set of characters to the Resident Evil universe. It quickly developed a cult following. But in 2007, Capcom made the decision to shut down the servers for the North American version of the game, with the Japanese servers following 4 years later. This meant that players could no longer play with others online, removing the most important component of the game.
Once those servers go down, that's it. Those games are literally dead. Now, I know several PC games that I literally can't play them because the servers meant to download the necessary files have been shut down.
The game could still be played offline with AI teammates, but it's not a great experience, and the AI isn't that helpful in helping you finish the game's objectives. It was a game that was truly designed from the ground up to be played with other people, and without online support, it would be an experience that could never be enjoyed again. But for a group of dedicated Resident Evil Outbreak fans, that wasn't an acceptable end to the story. Behind the scenes, a small team had been working around the clock to make sure the online experience could continue into the future. In the waning days of the official Capcom servers, the team had been archiving the network packets moving between the PlayStation 2 console and the game's servers. These packets contained key information that would explain how the servers worked, and saving this data before the shutdown would buy them the time they needed to reverse engineer their own servers. Years later, their efforts paid off, and their unofficial servers were ready for the public. In 2014, their site OBSRV.org was born. Fans could once again play the game online without official support from the game's publisher. In a forum post, one of the architects of the fan servers, known as The Fog, recounts the early stages of the process. I can still remember the first steps I took together with Isles. It was only a few weeks before the official servers closed, and we were in danger of running out of time. Isles was capturing packets like a maniac. I was analyzing and coding all night, and we were a little bit frightened not knowing whether we did enough after the servers closed. But we were rewarded with the great feeling that we were the only ones on the whole planet able to see the online mode when the first real multiplayer session worked for us. Outbreak's online mode would be safe forever. Following in the spirit of preservation, the project is open source, so even if the current team stops maintaining the servers, anybody else could pick up where they left off. Nearly 20 years later, today's technology is able to bridge the gaps of the game's shortcomings. It's easier to communicate with your friends with apps like Zoom or Discord. There are now applications that emulate PS2 hardware, allowing you to play the game on modern computers. Load times back then were excruciatingly slow, but emulating the game on today's computers that are far more powerful make the load times way faster. They can also render the game at higher resolutions, improving the graphics. And players can use modern wireless controllers for convenience. With Resident Evil Outbreak being easier than ever to play, the game is seeing a revival, with popular Twitch streamers playing it online for thousands of viewers. Capcom has released other online Resident Evil games since then, but none of them have resonated with fans in quite the same way as Outbreak. Resident Evil Resistance averages less than 100 players per day on the PC, just a year from release. One day, those servers will be shut down too. Even worse, that game doesn't have any single-player component, and you need to log on to their servers to play anything at all. With games that require an internet connection to even access the main menu, it's likely to become much more difficult to preserve these games in the same way that Outbreak was. Gaming is now home to so many temporary experiences that won't ever get to be played by future generations. One solution would be for the developers to release the source code to their games after they shut them down, so that the community can continue to preserve them for future generations.
Everyone talks about, again, how much they were moved by The Last of Us 2, or, how Animal Crossing helped them during the whole pandemic of 2020. Well, if you care that much about it, don't you want people to be able to experience this 15, 20 years from now?
Only time will tell how successful preservation efforts will be for modern games. But like books, films, and other forms of art, making older games accessible to future generations needs to happen. And with more games shutting down every year, the clock is ticking.